Welcome to Codex History of Video Games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And I'm Tyler Osby.
And today, a very exciting special guest. We have Ryan James is here. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, you are the author of The Most Relaxing Games, a book that just came out. And we looked at it, we went through it, we read it, and we're here to talk to you about it. And I'm extremely excited to have you here.
I'm excited / a little bit nervous as well, so we'll see how it goes.
The nerves. Don't worry, Tyler, hit the tangent button. Let's just make him feel more relaxed.
Here's the tangent button.
That's good. That way, if we ever want to go off on a tangent, we can do that. We have some cool drops also. And in fact, don't you do applause? Don't we have an applause one?
Oh, I do have an applause button, yeah. But hold on, I have to find it. Oh, no, it's so far away. Applause.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we're good. Okay. So we wrote down some stuff here about like what we thought about the book, and I kind of wanted to just open it up by asking you like what made you want to write a book specifically about relaxing games?
So funnily enough, the original idea, I had an idea for a book which in my head I titled A Video Game for Any Occasion. And the concept behind it was going to be each chapter was focused on a group of games from a type of category that would be games to relax to, games to make drinking games out of, games to finish in a weekend, just all sorts of different categories, and maybe focus on 4 or 5 games per category. And so when I spoke with the publisher White Owl, who published the Relaxing Video Games book, we had a conversation and we discussed the idea of like, well, each of these different categories, there's so many examples here that why narrow it down to 4 or 5? Like you could make a full book and just focus on one at a time with this. And so that made a lot of sense. And it then got thrown to me of which one would you like to focus on? And so, of course, like the drinking game one, could be amusing and everything, but the relaxing game side of things, video games have helped me a lot, particularly relaxing ones when it comes to my anxiety and things like that. All video games to some degree can do that, but there was a whole list of examples that helped me from childhood to teenage to now, even now to this day, that I will go to, and they help me refocus my mind, refocus my energy, and just soothe me and relax me. So it seemed like a no-brainer to go with that subject over all the others that were featured in this book.
Yeah.
And thus
Does that mean we're going to see some more books too?
There's one that's very similar style to this one. I just handed in the first draft of that, so I imagine that will probably come out next year. There's a third one, but that's a very different thing. So it won't be another one of those category types. It's more of an encyclopedia book, but that's a long ways off because I'm still writing that at the moment.
Nice. Yeah, I like that you said it's not just. I suppose that's why you didn't use the buzzword term cozy, also, because I feel like relaxing is different than cozy, in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking like, the definition of cozy, definition of relaxing. I mean, the thing is, those words can mean different things to different people, and they can get those feelings from different places as well. And relaxing did seem like the better fit, especially, as you've seen from the lineup in the book. Some of them, I wouldn't necessarily call them cozy, but to me, they have a relaxing feel to them.
Sure. I was actually thinking about it. It makes sense because I'm a big fan of like the new Doom games, like Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. And while those are not by any definition cozy, they do relax me, even though it's like in a way, like when you get in the flow state of it, kind of, you're like, this feels nice. Like I feel like I'm just doing it and it's fun. So in that sense, it makes a lot of sense that way. So, okay, now then, what you kind of just answered it a little bit, but if you had to break it down, what is your definition of a relaxing game? Like when you were like, does this belong in this book? Like, what did you think about?
I mean, there wasn't like a written rule or series of rules that they have to match, because I wound up, if they was, I would wind up breaking them with pretty much each entry that would follow after that. So the first sort of like thing I would look to was personal experience, like games that for me personally have checked that box of I can sit back, I can lean back in my chair. If it's a game where I need to be sat forward, hunched over, then that to me is not relaxing. Like I'm on edge, I'm tense, and it's a very different experience you have then. So there was that side of it from personal experience and like what I found personally relaxing. But then, other elements of it as well is, the subject matter that can obviously, ignite relaxing feelings in your mind, the setting or the music or the presentation in general. And then on the other side, it could be the gameplay, the type of game it is. So it was, let's say, it was quite loose in terms of like, it has to have a relaxing theme, it has to be a relaxing genre, and I have to have, it because though there are games there that I found more relaxing that check only one of those boxes than those that perhaps check both of them. And again, it was another thing was that I wanted to create a list that would surprise as well as like just have the expected games in it. I mean, there are examples of those that you would expect, like Animal Crossing New Horizons. Like I think a lot of people would look at that name on the list and go, well, yeah, obviously, of course that's in there. But I like the idea of throwing a few curveballs in there, but not for the sake of throwing a curveball. And hopefully it comes across in the book. I wanted to explain why it's in there. I didn't want to just put it in there and say, deal with it and accept it that it's in here. It's like, this is my experience with it. And hopefully if you were to give it a try, you might have that same experience and see it in that same way.
I thought Donkey Kong Country was a good example of one that you might not expect, because I've definitely had my adrenaline going at parts in that game. It was the first game that I ever finished as a kid too. But then you get stuff like Aquatic Ambiance, that song, right? That's just like, you just pause the game and just sit there and like vibe for a little while. And so that was one that like stuck out to me. It's like, oh, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of there's a few examples in the book where as I'm like writing this, I'm thinking this is one that's going to, raise a few eyebrows probably for the reasons that you said. It can be frustrating. I mean, at the time when you compared it with Super Mario World or Sonic the Hedgehog, it was, to me at least, the far more challenging platformer out there. But because of the atmosphere that it creates, and I still think it holds up today, like, I try and make a habit of playing that game, whenever I, just because you can get it done in an evening. Like the presentation, the music, and sometimes the lack of music, where you play some of those stages like in the caves where it's just echoey noises, but yet it somehow creates almost like this beat that goes along with you rolling and cartwheeling your way through. So yeah, again, that's one of those examples where from a gameplay perspective, you don't necessarily consider platformers to be too relaxing, because a lot of the time they're about fast reactions and holding your nerve and just trying to get through these increasingly difficult levels. But from the subject matter, the vibe, the atmosphere of it all, that to me, like every time I play that, I can't, as you say, Aquatic Ambience and Donkey Kong Country 2 again, like that soundtrack as well, when you have Sticker Brush Symphony, I think it's called, with that level is hell when you play it the first time, because trying to figure out which barrel where you need to fire, and you just end up going in this endless loop. But then you don't mind because the music is just so awesome. And I think even the newer ones like Tropical Freeze that came out, again, having David Wise back, who worked on the music for that, those original games, the music even in these newer titles have that same feeling. And the reason I put the first one in is just because I feel like, again, bit of personal choice, but also I felt like when you compare it with 2, like the difficulty is perhaps a little less steep. So, maybe it justified a bit better than putting in like the toughest Donkey Kong Country in there. Because personally, the second one is my favorite. And it's, one I still relax to. But the first one, after you go back, definitely feels like the easier game. And I think it also has more like naturalistic environments. Donkey Kong Country 2 has that pirate theme about it, and you've got like carnivals and things like that, whereas the first one is caves, it's temples, it's the jungle, it's underwater, things like that.
The ice caves too, I think the music in the ice levels are really relaxing too.
Absolutely.
I mean, you hit on the big thing with this podcast. It's just promoting Sticker Brush Symphony. So you really did it. I mean, we've mentioned that so many times on the podcast.
I try to get at least one reference in every episode.
Yeah, every episode we talk about it. So you open the book with to be a choice that it's kind of something we haven't talked about a lot on the podcast, and that is just board games in video game form. And you'd mentioned the 51, the collection, the Nintendo collection, the 51, and it's got, it has your standard like as you mentioned, Mancala, like checkers, chess, but it also has like fishing and weird mini games like the tanks, like battle tanks, like older arcade style games. Was that one of the first ones you thought about when you were making the book, of like this, like board games in a video game form?
Yeah, I mean, when I started formulating the list, the first thing I did was, because I'm one of those strange people who I have a spreadsheet that lists every video game I own, whether it's digital or physical, and I've got the format it came out for, the year it came out, the genre, all these useless bits of information that I'm never going to really need, but it's there because it, I don't know, calms the crazy a bit more.
Ryan,
But
you belong here. This is what we do. We have Trello boards with all the games we track and we play. Like this is not a weird thing. You're in the right place right now, Ryan.
I
This is
finally found my
perfect.
people.
You found your people. I love that. I love spreadsheets. Yeah, we use. Tyler told me to use a Trello board. That's how we organize it. We have them public so everyone that listens can see what games we're not playing that we've bought on Steam that just sit there.
That's awesome. See, to me that sounds awesome, but I'm sure
Yeah.
to many it's like, okay, yeah, sure,
No,
why not?
I love it. Yeah, you're in good company here. So
Awesome. So yeah, I used that list. So about 1,500 games, working my way through and going right, this one, and of course 51. Well, it's called 51 Worldwide Games here, I think, and I think it's called Clubhouse Games, maybe in the US.
yeah, I
Is that
think it's
right?
Clubhouse because when I was looking it up, I was it's Clubhouse here, or like Club 51. It might even be Club 51 or something like that.
Yeah, and so of course it appears at the top of my list because numbers will appear first when I alphabetize it. And so looking at that, and plus my wife and I would play that a lot. She's not, a big gamer, but she will play. She played Animal Crossing during the lockdown. We played it together. And that one to me is quite a personal choice because it helped us get through that. When you're locked in your homes for months on end, not being able to see your friends and family, and that game offered a chance to escape from all that for even if for a moment. But yeah, she would play that with me. We'd play through, have almost like, okay, let's do a best of 5. No, let's do best of 7. No, let's keep going best of 9 because I feel like I've got you now. And so yeah, it was one that right off the bat was I need to include this because we're playing, and plus board games outside of video games are a great way to just sit back and chill, whether it's a simple card game or even if you play something it's little bit more complex. I mean, board games get so complex now, but I think by their very nature, a lot of them you can take your time, you just sit back, have a drink, and then just play them at a table. But it was kind of funny to me, opening a book that's here are the most relaxing video games, and the first video game in that book is about a video game that is about board games. So it's just like this weird contradiction there of like, if you want to relax with a video game, you should play a board game. But then there are board, like video gamey elements to it. Like there's, as you mentioned, a few examples like the tanks mini game. There's bowling, there's darts, but those are good fun, like simple silly fun. There's a whole bunch of games in there that we even today we just return to when we've got like a spare 15 minutes. It's like, oh, should we just play a round of Connect 4? Yeah, let's just do that real quick, and it winds up being a best of 3 or a best of 5 and just keeps going basically.
Yeah, you really actually inspired me to look into getting that because it's a great idea for that. Just like what you just said, you have 15 minutes to spare. You want to play a game real quick, just kill a little bit of time. It's perfect.
Yeah, especially if you're traveling as well, like just to break it out in handheld mode and then be able to play a lot of these games 2-player on in front of you, like a board game travel version basically. It's one of those games as well that I think perhaps maybe gets overlooked because it's not a traditional video game. It's like that compilation of board games and card games that sure, you could play them any other way you like, but I think there's so many in there. And it's also the fact that you have the expected examples, like you see their version of Uno in there. I forget what it's called in there, but they don't call it Uno obviously, or Yahtzee. But then they have a lot of games that you probably never heard of before. I not heard of the Hound and Hare, I think it's called, or Hare and Hound. I forget
Yeah,
which way around it is.
I was looking at a compilation of all the games in there, and they mentioned that one. I don't know anything about that game at all.
So I think it's a French game originally, and quite an old one at that as well. And the idea is you just have like this grid. I think it's 3 rows long and lines connecting all these dots. And the idea is one of you is playing as a hare, and one of you is playing as, I want to say, 2 or 3 dogs. I forget. And the idea is that the player with the hare wants to get to the other side, and then the player as the dogs wants to stop them from doing that. And I think they have a certain number of turns to do that. So you're moving one space at a time along this.
Oh.
And it's very simple. And it's the kind of game that when you play, you can easily make mistakes that you go, why did I do that? I've just left myself open here, or now I'm going to get trapped and I'm going to lose the game. And as I say, that's one that I'd never heard of before until playing 51 Worldwide Games. And there's more examples like Carom, I think it's called as well, or I probably pronounced it wrong, but it's basically, hey, what if we took pool, but we did it on a big wooden board and you flick discs instead? into holes. And I looked this up, and it's like these boards are massive, and they're really nice looking, very polished and everything. And yeah, all you're doing is you've got a hole in each corner, and you are just flicking your disc and trying to hit your other discs in these holes. And it's one of the most addictive games in that package. So much so that my dad even bought one of the physical boards himself when he saw the game. And so now when we go over there, we wind up playing the actual full proper version of it in person.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to look at it. I mean, you mentioned, by the way, when you mentioned that you could make a wrong move and then you're like, oh no, like now it's all falling apart. Every time I play a board game with a little kid that's like Connect 4 or something, I'm like, I can't do that. I can't lose this little kid right now.
Yep.
And then it always inevitably happens, like tic-tac-toe or something. You're like, I'm going to beat this kid at tic-tac-toe.
Yep.
I'm an adult. I got this. And then you make the wrong move. You're like, no, why? Oh, it just makes me think of that. Those kind of moments are fun, though. And that game seems to like bring that forward to light. I love that. Yeah, you sold me. I mean, you might as well be a sales rep at this point for that game. I'm into it. Tyler, you got any more questions or?
No. The 51 worldwide game sounds fun, and I do want to pick it up now because there's so much stuff in there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, even if some of them don't strike with you, like you're gonna have a good like 24 at least or something that you're like these are worth returning to. I mean, there's even a game called I think it's called Dots and Boxes, where I don't know if you've ever used to do that at school, where you would have a dotted grid, and basically you take turns drawing lines between the dots, and then the idea is you want to create as many boxes as possible. So obviously you don't want to leave 3 sides of a box filled in, because that person will then fill in it and complete that square. And it's like, it is, as I say, used to play that at school, like primary, elementary school, essentially. But it's in here, and you think, I haven't played this in years, like decades at this point, but it's still really fun. Like, why haven't I played this? It's
so
great.
true. I used to play that game all the time. I have not thought of that game in like 25 years. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Did you play that Tyler at school?
I've never heard of that game.
Oh, it was
intense.
It had a moment. Like, I feel like when you're in high school, hit the tangent button. We're doing it, Tyler. I feel like when you were in like middle school or high school, there was games that would like flow through the class, right? Like Speed, the card game, which is also in that collection, was one of them, where you'd like go through that. But that Dots and Boxes game was on that list too. Like, totally.
Yeah.
Do you guys have games like that you remember playing? Is it for both of you, by the way? Like in high school, that like there was like a
Speed.
quarter. Oh, Speed. You played Speed?
Speed was absolutely one of them.
Oh, War. Okay, War was another one.
Yeah. See, that was a new one for me. I'd never played that, and it was one of those things of like, what is this game? And thinking, oh, it's going to be very complex. And it's like, no, this is actually the opposite of that.
Yeah,
it's so easy to pick up and play. Exactly. I mean, one we used to play a lot was we used to call it Pig, where you would, if there were 4 of you, you would get the ace, king, queen, and jack cards. And basically, you've got a hand of 4 cards, and you're passing them around this circle one at a time, and then the other person passes their card to you. And the idea is that you want to get 4 of the same. And the first person to do it, and there's different variations of this. The first one to do it puts their finger on their nose, and then everyone else has to do it as well. And the last person to do that gets the letter P until they spell pig. So it's one of those things of you want to be the first one to do it, but then you also need to be aware of what everyone else is doing, because if you're not, you could be caught out where you're just looking at your cards and everyone's like doing this and looking at you, waiting for you to realize. And when we were idiots, we used to play it with spoons, so everyone's just like grabbing in the table.
Yeah.
That's how I remember.
We all play. It's called spoons. We all played it with spoons. That's how I did it too here. Yeah, it's so funny that you did the nose instead of the spoon thing. That's like a.
Oh yeah, I mean that was before we found out about the much more fun, dangerous way of grabbing metal in the middle of a table. So it's like, well, we have to play this way.
There was a game. This is going to be. I mean, this is a little for a clean podcast. This is a little graphic. We did I'm saying that jokingly. It's fine. When you would take a quarter, and you would like lay it on the table, and you would try to shoot it at someone else's hand as fast as you could. Yep. And if you bled, you lost the game. That was the
Bloody Knuckles.
Yeah, blood is called Bloody Knuckles. We called it quarters because I think we were trying to hide it from the teacher, but it was bloody. But yeah, I remember playing that. It's like that had a phase. you know,
Yeah,
in high
we
school.
had that as well. Yeah, I mean, we had for some reason games involving pain.
Yeah.
Which you look
Very
back on now and
relaxing.
go, yeah, yeah, exactly. In fact, four of them are in this book. No, like there was one where we would throw a tennis ball at a wall. Like you'd have a wall and throw a tennis ball, and back and forth. There would be three, four of you, however many, and you had to catch it with one hand. And if you fumbled it, you would then have to go on the wall for 10 seconds, and then of course everyone else is pelting a tennis ball at you as you're on there.
It's such a weird, what was it before, like, the internet? It was just all shame and pain. That's all it was.
I don't know. Sometimes it feels like that's the case still now as
Yeah,
well.
that's true. It's just a different kind of, it's just electronic shame. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the tangent's over. We did it. Good job, everybody. Okay. I have some more. Do you want to go next, Tyler, with your questions? Or you want me to keep going here?
Yeah, you can keep going. It's fine.
Okay. So you actually brought up one. We mentioned we had we talked about non-violent video games with James Batchelor. He had a book that came
Mhm.
out too, and we mentioned this to him. There is something about golf as a game that just fits this mindset. But the interesting spin that I like that it was in your book is you picked a VR golf game as well. You mentioned I believe it was Everybody's Golfing, right? Is this the name of it? I
Yeah.
believe. And
Everybody's golf. Yeah.
Everybody's Golf. Did you specifically like? Are you like a VR person, or because we don't have a lot of experience with it, so I would love to talk
Mhm.
about like the immersion of VR and how it relates to like a relaxing game.
Sure. So I mean, I've played a lot of the headsets at shows and things like that. I have a PSVR, the first one, not the second one. So a lot of my experience would come from playing games through that. In fact, the three games that I include are on the PSVR. And the golfing game, I mean, golf by its very nature, when you think of all sports, is relaxing. I mean, it takes place in in a lovely, beautiful setting a lot of the time. Rolling green hills. Even the crowd are like so respectful. Even the clapping, exactly the golf clap. As opposed to going to a sport where people are whooping and cheering and yelling. Um, and it's just peaceful. And so, there is. I think if I remember, I did put other golf games in here as well, which were not VR related. But it wasn't until I played Everybody's Golf that I realized, yeah, okay, this does heighten that sense of immersion of being out on a golf course. And I think VR is one of those things that, for me at least, I feel it works particularly well for two genres, and that, or at least I used to believe it was the case. It would be racing games, of being sat in the cockpit and feeling right there and being able to look left and right and see outside your window, and then horror being the other one, but for the opposite reason of being relaxing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've ever been as scared and twitchy and sweaty as playing Resident Evil 7 in VR. Like that whole experience, there was one of those things where I said to my wife, like, I know we mess around, I know we like to prank each other and things like that, but this is the one time where when I've got this headset on and I'm sat in a room and I have no idea because I've got headphones on, don't come and make me jump because we will fall out. Because if I haven't just had a heart attack, we will fall out. I feel it never felt more exposed and more just at risk. But with the golfing side of things, as I say, the moment I put that headset on and started playing, you're out there on the course. It's just you in this game as well. There's not really a crowd, so you really are just yourself, the green, hitting the ball, relaxing, peaceful. And as I say, like you have this element of you feel right there, which you don't get from looking in a television screen. I mean, that's obviously still relaxing, but to be there, put on your headset and just completely tune out from the rest of the world. And I think when it comes to video games, it's a perfect representation of what the sport is in real life. When you look at golf, it's far more relaxing than basketball or hockey or whatever the case may be, because those are tend to be contact sports and tend to be a bit more and back and forth and as I say, you have the crowds just constantly cheering or booing and things like that, whereas golf is just the exact opposite. I mean, there's a reason people go to driving ranges even if they don't play golf, because it's just a way for them to unwind, even if they can't hit the ball very far or very well. There's just something about it that you can just lose yourself for an hour or two and just relax and let out some stress, basically.
Even the competitive aspect of it, I think, like, yeah, you compete against other people to try to get a better score, but
Hmm.
what you do and what they do doesn't necessarily affect each other, right? So you're still
Exactly.
really only playing against yourself. You're just playing against yourself with other people.
For sure. I mean, it's one of those things where okay, there's a psychological element of this guy's like hot on my tail, but you're not, as you say, you're not directly interfering with them in any way. It's not like you're trying to put them off or or hit their ball with your ball out of the way. Um, but as I say, when it comes to the you're competing with yourself essentially. Like you're trying to better yourself, like because that's what the score's about. It's your score, it's no one else's. If I've got 5 under, maybe next time I could do 6 or 7 under. It does, and I think even when you play video game versions, like yes, you're competing against other computer players or your friends, but at the same time, you've still got that personal sort of like I just want to better my score. And at the end of the day, if I don't, I don't. If I do, I do. And I think that's why golf can work both from can work from a competitive angle, but especially from a non-competitive one as well.
Nice. Yeah.
Is
Also,
it safe to say that's your favorite golf game?
My favorite golf game is probably Mario Golf Toadstool Tour.
Nice.
Because and as much as I enjoy the sports games now that Nintendo put out, I feel like then like the GameCube was the peak for me with Mario Power Tennis, and then Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, because I felt they really leaned into just like the chaos and the craziness of Mario, like having items in tennis matches, having tennis courts where things happen on the court that can really throw you off. It's not just playing on a grass court all the time. Mario Strikers Charged for the Wii is another one where taking a sport that and then just twisting it in a way that sets it apart from just playing another FIFA or another Pro Evolution Soccer, for example. But yeah, Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, I think there was just that hitting the button multiple times to stop a meter, like, is just so satisfying to play even now. There's so much content in there from the courses you play to the modes. Like there's a slot machine mode in there where before you play each hole, you stop a slot machine and it dictates what clubs you get to use. So if you're really unlucky, you could be facing a par 5 with like a 7 iron, and suddenly you're in massive trouble. But I love that element of it because, as I say, it gives you something different that the Tiger Woods games wouldn't necessarily do at the time.
definitely. On that everybody's golf game, do you have like ambient sounds too? So does it feel like you're like out on, like, do you hear birds chirping and stuff too? I guess.
Yeah. I mean, another thing I would do is just play some of my own sort of like tunes on there, where I would just get my headphones from my phone and just play some relaxing tunes that way as well. But yeah, I mean, it tends to just be the background side, which I actually prefer. Like, I think that works out much better a lot of the time when it's because music is one of those things that I feel can be hit and miss when it comes not just to is it relaxing, but is it any good? Whereas at least if it's just, let's just have the background noise, because at the end of the day, that's all you need when you're playing golf or something like that.
For sure. Well, I have another question for you here, and it's in pertaining to like a choice you made in the book, but I really, really like this. I can't stress enough how much I like the "Did you know" sections at the end of each with a little bit of trivia at the end. What made you want to put that in the book? Was it just like a fun thing for you to like look up, or?
It was. I think it was a bit more selfish than that. It was like I like that stuff, so I want that in there. Like,
Yeah.
I love finding out these little random things about not just video games, anything, whether it's behind the scenes stuff or just this thing did this crazy thing, or it sold this many or broke records. Because it's the kind of thing that I like then telling people about and going, did you know this? And there's a lot of these games, it's like there's got to be so much of this stuff out there, and so it came from purely that selfish reason of I would like this, so this is my book and let's put it in here, and hopefully other people like it as well, because there's so many facts in there that even now when I read them, it either makes me laugh or makes me go, wow, holy like hell, that's insane. I mean, one of them I think was for unpacking, which was the idea that I think it has like 14,000 sound files in there, and they're all for the idea like putting objects on different surfaces. So putting a bottle on a wooden surface versus a glass one versus the toilet backing, the ceramic of the toilet backing, to like just a carpet and things like that. So they had to account for all these different sounds that may happen depending where you put it, and as a result, they had like over 10,000 different files in there. Which I just thought was kind of crazy, the idea of having to get all that together. For something that, many people probably won't even notice that sort of stuff. Like that bowl didn't sound right being put on a wooden table as opposed to if it was put on a toilet. But I think it was cool and awesome that they did that.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. I'm a big fan of the trivia, and I know our audience is, I feel like, too. So yeah, this is just something that I was like, we need to talk about this because I loved it.
I'm a big fan
I'm
of
glad.
trivia as well.
Yeah, it's like just random video game trivia. It's what we're all about.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I did notice a pattern in the book, and I don't know if this is just because of like what you personally lean towards. So I guess it's kind of a question for you. Do you lean towards Nintendo more than other publishers? I just noticed there's a lot of Nintendo
Hmm.
in the book, and that's not bad. Obviously, I
Hmm.
just was curious if it's something you put in, like, thought about when you were doing it, or
I mean, they were the first, like their games and the first system I started out was the SNES, and Super Mario World was the first game I ever played. So I think, of course, there's always going to be that nostalgic factor and that influence of I've been playing their games for decades now. Whenever they have a big new release coming out, I'll be there to get it straight away, most of the time at least. But I think, I mean, I play PS5 games. I play games on the Series X. PC is the only one I don't because, I mean, what I have is not powerful enough to run a lot of the stuff these days. I do have a Steam Deck, which I've started to use as well, so I am getting a bit more into the PC side. And because of my line of work, we're working at a company called FanCensus, which is data analytics company. We work with a lot of publishers and developers, so you form these friendships, and then you get these codes, which is really great. So it then gives me the ability to try out games that I would not necessarily try out myself normally if I was to buy it, but then also play them on other platforms outside of Nintendo, because I do review for a Nintendo website as well. So of course I get a lot of codes for that. But Nintendo in particular, I think like their platforms like tend to like gel best with relaxing games or wholesome games a lot of the time. Not just from Nintendo themselves, but from third parties as well, and indies and things like that. I mean, when you look at their catalog of games, it covers such a broad spectrum of genres. There is a lot of platformers, of course, but then you look at the likes of Animal Crossing being a life sim game. You look at Captain Toad Treasure Tracker being a puzzle game. You look at like it's not just like PlayStation. You could argue is focusing a lot of their efforts on these big third-person action adventure type products now. Xbox, they've always been Xbox and PlayStation seen as the more real, like they have the gritty, realistic games. Xbox had Gears of War and it had Halo. PlayStation had Killzone and it had Infamous and things like that. Swearing, yeah, awesome. And then Nintendo was, we've got a plumber, who jumps around. We've got a guy in a green tunic. We've got a little pink ball who floats around. So I think as a result, because Nintendo have these more family focused products, as a result, a number of them do tend to fall into that more relaxing category because they can sometimes be less demanding, like Kirby, or the Yoshi games that came out, like Crafted World and Woolly World recently. But then it can also just be the very sort of like they're not violent, they're not asking you to learn endless combos. It's just they're just a fun time, and of course they're family focused, Mario Kart, things like that. So I think, yes, there is a number of Nintendo titles in there, and I think it's a mixture of, I've played a lot of them from personal experience. I found them relaxing, but also I think Nintendo platforms have always just attracted those types of games and worked best on there as well for that audience.
Yeah, I think there's something also just in the way the Switch is designed, like what it's designed to do.
Mm.
It's more influenced by that kind of type of game. Like it's
Sure, yeah,
for that way,
definitely.
like
I
the
mean,
portability of it too.
yeah, I mean, as I said, my wife's not a big gamer, but if I wasn't in the picture, what system is she like to have bought without my info? She's not going to get a PlayStation. She's not going to get an Xbox. The Switch was the one she was always going to get because Animal Crossing. She plays the Picross games nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
I do as well. Like they're some of the most addictive little puzzles those things are. I mean, I think I have every single Picross S game that has come out. I think there's been 9 or 10 of them now at this point, plus a
Wow.
Mega Drive version as well with all the sprites from those games. So when I'm talking to people who are not necessarily gamers, what are the games they tend to talk about to me? It's Switch games. They're not talking about necessarily the latest Spider-Man 2 or they're looking at Starfield, for example. They're focused on those Nintendo brands a lot of the time.
Nice.
Well, I got a couple of games that that were in the book that I just want to talk about. The first one being Journey. But I don't know, Mike, have you played Journey yet?
I have not. This is a big hole in my gaming library because I remember
Yeah.
I saw it on there and I was like, that's something I missed because that was PlayStation originally, right?
Yeah, it was a
Which
PlayStation
is
3 game.
which is a big gap in my.
Yeah.
I wasn't a PlayStation guy for years, so
Yeah, it's on everything now. You can
It
get
is?
it on
Okay.
PC and Switch, and
Yeah.
I think it's
writing
on
it
Switch.
down.
Anyway, but yeah, I just tell me about that. Tell me your thoughts on that, Ryan, because I love that game. I love the atmosphere and just how it feels.
I mean, to me, it's like one of those games that almost feels like more an experience as opposed to just a game. Because, of course, it's not the most demanding thing in the world. It's not like, oh my god, I'm running out of time, or oh, I've got to worry about this. I mean, I know there are elements of that with you've got to avoid enemies to some degree, but I think it's just like, I mean, there's a reason that it won. I think it won an award for its soundtrack. It was the first game to ever be nominated, and then I think it did win. I can't remember exactly, but because it's the presentation, it's the whole package, it's art in a way, like just the visual style of it. All you have to do is look at a single screenshot of that game, and you're like, wow, like it just stands out for so many amazing reasons. And then when you have the audio as well, but then some of the other perhaps elements that are not as focused on that I really enjoyed was the multiplayer elements of it, where the way they implemented it, and it's kind of similar to the way Dark Souls did it, where for me Dark Souls implementation of multiplayer was so cool and unique in that is you can leave messages around for people. I thought that was such a unique way to implement that in a primarily single player focused experience. With Journey, again, a very unique way of implementing it where you don't know who it is. Like you're not communicating with them. All you're doing is just moving around, and you can go your own way. You can just go about doing whatever, or you can follow each other. And you both walk away from that experience not knowing that person, but you almost feel like as if you've stuck together, like you feel something from that. Like you feel like this person that could be on the other side of the world. We just shared this experience. We don't know each other. We don't have to know each other. We've just had a great time just playing this game and experiencing it together.
Well, it's
And
different people too. It could like floating in and out. Like it could end up being
exactly, and
more
you
than
don't
one person that you play with.
you wouldn't easily know. Like it's just so seamless, and it's just such a unique thing that at least when I played, or from the games I've played, like you don't really see. And as I say, like it's short, it's super short. You can get through it so quick, and I think that's one thing that nowadays that people overlook is that short games are awesome. Like they don't need to be 30, 40 hours and have side quests that are going to make you play it till the end of time. Sometimes you just want a game that you can finish in an evening or a weekend and walk away from. And sometimes it's better for it because you remember it and go, I had a 2, 3, 4 hour amazing experience versus I had a 30-hour experience where I felt half the time I was doing stuff that kind of dragged. And so it then lessens that the amazing experience I had with the other 15 hours because I'm then also thinking about the less amazing stuff. So yeah, and I mean, it was an obvious choice. It's one of those obvious choices I felt as well that went in there. It was also when I was asking for people's feedback on what would you put in there, like what would you put in this list. Journey was one that came up, along with Flower as well was another one, which is also another one from that development team. And again, one that is super chilled. Telling the story is almost yours to figure what you want it to be in Flower. And again, it's just you're just floating around, just bringing the environment to life, and that's all it is. That's all it needed to be. It was, as I say, it was that the presentation of it all that just took it to that next level, much like Journey.
Nice, yeah. You're preaching to the choir with short games. Like we stand a short game here. Okay, I think having a game that's like 3 or 4 hours long is perfect, especially when you get older and you like have commitments. It's like you need that kind of short thing.
Absolutely
getting the full complete experience.
Yeah, exactly. Telling a story. Like Firewatch was a big one. Like my wife, she plays a lot of the story-based shorter games, and she did a short hike, which is also in the book. She actually just played that, so it was fun to see. And so yeah, having a short experience that's just like, oh, it's a nice little story. It was perfect. That's great. It's a great game.
Yeah, definitely.
You got
another one that also sticks out to me is Tetris Effect too,
Mm-hmm.
because I've definitely, especially in the higher levels of Tetris, like you can really get your blood pumping as it gets faster and faster. Especially, oh man, if you watch like people who play Tetris professionally, it's insane what they can do. But I love the atmosphere and the ambiance of Tetris Effect. Reminded me a lot of Luminous or Lumines on the
Yeah,
PSP, which I think it's by the same creator. I think it's like the same sort of
yeah.
or the same guy who does these like music based puzzle games.
Hmm.
But I think both of those games have like a really cool like Zen sort of like just zone out feeling while you're doing it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Tetris has that where it's almost like you got tunnel vision just focused on what's going on in front of you. And then it's almost like you're subconsciously doing everything. You're not really thinking about it. And it just happens. And then, a lot of the time it just works out. Oh, I've made this perfect, you know, gap on the right here where I can just slot some, four, is it I shapes? I forget what the letters they call them are. Though you have O and I, and
Hmm.
just slot them in and get 2 Tetrises in a row. And then you just easily do it. But then Tetris games have existed for years and years and years. But when that game came out and then you hear about it, you're like, okay, it's another Tetris game that looks pretty. But to sit down with it and experience it, and that's one that with VR as well just took it to a whole nother level where, again, for me personally, playing it, it went from being an amazing Tetris game to one that almost like was an emotional Tetris game. Like you're sat there with this headset on, with your headphones on, and the combination of the music, the visuals, the lights that are appearing in front of you. It's hard to explain, and it probably sounds really silly, but going from this range of emotions, from just being sad one moment to being full of joy the next, and the whole time, like, you take the headset off and you're almost like, you just need to take a breath and go. Yeah, and I mean, but then I had my wife play it, and then she has the opposite experience where she is just nonstop stressed. Like she was just like, oh my god, trying to juggle all this stuff and get them in the right place. So I'm watching her play it, and she's going like that with the headset with the control, whereas I'm sat there playing it, just going, just in another world. And Lumines is one that I hadn't actually played, and Tetris Effect got me to go and check that out because Tetris Effect, I was like, this is so good. I want to see other stuff that they've done. And you're right, Lumines is one of those things that it's so clever as well. The way you use the music to get better scores, and you utilize the tempo and the beat of each song. That one I found more difficult for sure. Like I've never got to the end of that game, like through every song.
Hmm.
Whereas Tetris Effect, obviously did get to the end, and I have many, many, many times. But yeah, I just love. To me, that was a home run. It was like this has to be in here. Where even without the VR, it needs to be in here for sure.
Yeah, there's something nice about. I think Tetris is a good candidate for that in general because so many of us are so familiar with the game already. Like you said, you can
Yeah,
just like if you put a Tetris board in front of me, I can just zone out and like just subconsciously play it. So
yeah.
presenting it to me in a way that like that looks cool and sounds cool and like sort of ignites those other senses is I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it managed to turn, like, make you see Tetris as something else, that something more it could be, something that you never
Hmm.
expected it could be. Like Tetris has always been one of those, not a cold puzzler. There's nothing to it. Anytime they've tried to implement a story or do some crazy stuff, it's never quite worked, and you treated it for just a really addictive, fun puzzle game. But Tetris Effect then showed, oh no, if done right and with the right idea, it can become so much more than just dropping blocks in
Yeah.
spaces.
Did you watch the movie, the Tetris movie? I think it was on Apple TV.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
That is not relaxing.
No, there's
That is a
car
very
chases in it and
intense movie.
everything.
Yeah.
It was entertaining for sure. And it's one of
Yeah.
those things of how much of this is actually true. But it was, yeah, it was funny watching that movie after playing Tetris Effect and going, okay,
Yeah.
there's a lot of drama here and a lot less relaxing.
I think there's a kernel of truth that is heavily embellished, but it is a fun movie. It is a good
Yeah,
movie,
for
I
sure.
think.
I mean, what movie based on a true story isn't?
Yeah, that is true.
That's two
Yep.
games that I haven't played that you're both selling: Journey and Tetris Effect.
You got to play Journey,
Yeah.
man.
Okay,
And
I'm
you got to play
gonna.
both of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm looking them up. I'm gonna write that one down too. I'm just writing down the games that you guys recommend here. So
I mean, Tetris Effect, I think, is on everything now. It came out on Switch as well, and it's a great Switch game.
Mhm.
Put on your headphones and play it in handheld. It's still a good time.
Ooh,
Yep.
yeah.
I think it's on Game Pass, Mike, or it was when I played it.
Oh, really? Okay, I'll
Yeah,
look into that too.
on PC, so you can probably just
I'm
fire
all
it
about
right
that
up.
Game Pass. That's how I live my
Mhm.
life.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Do you have any games that you like wish were on the list that you had to cut or that you would add now later, like thinking back on it?
I mean, not. I mean, there are a few that, looking back, that I either didn't have time to play after I got told. I think what remained of Edith Finch was one.
Mm.
I think it was, and in hindsight, you're like, yeah, I think that should have been in here, but I think it was, as I say, had to get some. I wanted to finish this. I could have kept going, I'm sure, and I didn't want to drone on and on and on in this thing. And it was like, let's just pick the 50 plus that I feel really strongly about, or have been recommended to me that I did play, and did have that same impact of, oh yeah, no, I'm definitely going to return back to this and use this going forwards as a way to calm my anxiety. But that's probably one of the main ones. I don't. I mean, there are other examples again that for me personally, I find relaxing. But then, as I say, it was one that I felt like it probably would have been a bit too far for a lot of people to suspend that disbelief of, like, really, like, how is this relaxing? Like, I mean, a good example of that is, I don't know what, and I think it comes down from a place of nostalgia. Like, you did find, like, Sonic and All Stars Racing Transform quite relaxing, because it's just all these Mega Drive characters that I grew up with. And I'm so comfortable with that genre of kart racing. I've played, Mario Kart, every one pretty much, and Crash Team Racing and things like that. And it's like, this is relaxing, and I find it relaxing. Obviously, there's so much chaos going on, but it didn't feel like a right fit. I know that sounds crazy considering I've got a horror game in here.
You got the Quarry in there.
Yeah, but then it was like, well, my case for that is it's like watching a movie, but you're the director and you get to pick and choose. It's not a demanding game, because you're not, it's not like Resident Evil where you're in full control of this character and there are zombies and everything coming at you. It's, you're making decisions, you're listening to conversations, you're learning about these characters, and you can, I'm a fan of horror, and it's like I can sit back and relax and watch this play out. And I think there's even a mode where it can just do it all for you anyway. So if you wanted to treat it that way, then you could. And the great thing as well is, unlike a horror movie, you can come back to it and the experience can be different, because it may be that, oh, maybe you didn't wind up getting everyone killed. Maybe you could save a few people if you make the right decisions this time. So yeah, when you see that game and you see horror, immediately a red flag is raised, like, hang on a minute. But hopefully that's the case with all the games in this book, is that I do make a good case, or at least somewhat of a case, as to why it's in here. And that's why the Quarry was there. Was, I get it's a horror game, I get, like, fear and being scared is not relaxing, but if you are into that sort of stuff and watching, just sitting back and watching a movie, this is a great video game way of doing that, with some elements that you wouldn't get from a traditional movie.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Any games you would have included, Mike?
Ooh. I mean, you got the big one for me, which I'm obsessed with currently, which is Stardew Valley. I mean, you got that in there, and that's like, I'm playing the 1.6 update. That's a really good question. Do you have one in mind, Tyler, while I think about it?
I do have one in mind. This is one that I
Okay.
would have added. I would add, if I were the one making this book, I would have added SSX3, the snowboarding game. That one specifically because you can do a full run from the top of the mountain to the very bottom of the mountain, and I want to say it takes like 30 minutes, 45 minutes to do. And you're not necessarily racing anybody. You're not necessarily going for like a high score or trick score. You can do tricks and you're sort of graded on it, but you can just cruise down the whole mountain through every single course in one like seamless run. And it's very relaxing. I've done it a lot in my day.
See, it's funny you mentioned that, because I nearly, Tony Hawk is one that actually didn't make the cut, but it was considered, because not for the 2-minute timer, because of course that can be quite stressful, because I need to get the letter E and I'm struggling on this. Oh, I've got 30 seconds left, and then you lose and you've got to do it all over again. But I think in some of those games, like, you can do free skate, where it's really just about skating around the environment and just utilizing and just the rails, the half pipes, everything, just trying to get the best combo you can. And if you bail out, doesn't matter, because you're not being penalized for it. And especially in some of the later games, when they become more open world as well, as I say, like, it becomes less about these challenges, and it can then become more about, well, I'm just having a good time just skating around and expressing myself through doing rail grinding or grabs or whatever the case may be. So that might be another one.
That was going to be mine. You just took it. You just took it from me. But in that sense, like if you're thinking about a game and what makes it relaxing, I'm going to do a stretch. This is probably a big stretch.
Mhm.
Grand Theft Auto, just
Okay.
driving around those large, like road tripping in Grand Theft
Mhm.
Auto 5, and you have the radio on and you're just driving around, it feels relaxing. Like that feels good to me. You know what I mean? But that's just one small part of that game. Is the problem.
Just obeying traffic
Just
laws.
obeying
Yeah.
traffic, just
Stopping at red lights. Yeah.
driving the speed limit, just playing it straight. You
Yeah.
know, like it's
Mm.
just yeah, that's relaxing. So I guess it toes the line, but I love free skate and Tony Hawk. Like that's something I would
Yeah.
do as a kid a lot on my N64 was just free skate. So
Yeah.
that's kind of it'll be my vote too.
I totally get where you're coming from. Like LA Noire did that for me, I think, as well, where just driving around in the city in that game was like, again, you had to try and obey the law because you were the law as well. So you're trying to stick to all the rules, and it was just nice to take in the environment. But that whole idea of just taking a road trip, I mean, Outrun, Coast to Coast is in here, and the reason I put that in is because it radiates that road trip vibe about it, because that's what you're doing, and you 1 minute you're in their equivalent of Las Vegas, and the next minute you're out along the coastal beach, and then in a desert and everything, and it's just exciting. And to me, from day one of playing that is a game I play pretty much every month at this point, because it's just so easy to dip into, and it's comfortable, and it's something that it's cozy as well. I think that is a good example of a game that is cozy. And yeah, it just, as I say, like I love that whole road trip vibe. My wife and I took a road trip across California for our honeymoon,
Ooh.
and absolutely loved every moment of that. And ever since, even though that was 7 years ago, hopefully she doesn't listen to this moment where I'm questioning the years, but 2017 it was, so 7-8 years. As I say, I wanted to do it again, we just never got around to it. But Outrun just gives you that vibe every time you play it, of just hitting the open road and just taking in the scenery and having a good time.
That's a good run too from California. Like if you go north to south or south north, did you go along the coast?
Yeah, so we started in Anaheim for Disneyland because we're
Uh-huh.
big Disney fans, and then we went along the coast. We did the Big Sur, but
nice.
the weather was so foggy you couldn't see anything, so it was kind of disappointing,
bad.
underwhelming. And then we did Monterey, Carmel by Sea, Napa Valley, Yosemite, and then Vegas. We finished it, and then
All
then
right.
drove back to LA again as well to fly home. So I mean, we've gone like 2.5 weeks, and it was one of those things of like, look, let's just do it. Like we want to do it. Hadn't really done California properly. I've been in Vegas like I think went to E3, and then we drove to Vegas for like 1 day, so didn't really have much time between the jet lag and the tiredness to really take any of it in.
That's all you need in Vegas, if you ask me. One day. That's more
Yeah.
than that, and you kind of it's too much.
we had, I think we had 2 nights in there, and that felt like it was pushing it to a point. It was
Yeah.
like, we should probably done another night in Napa Valley, maybe that would have been
Yeah,
better.
that's the perfect amount of time in Vegas. 2 nights and you're done. Because I remember when I got out of college, right when I got out of college, I did like a 5-night trip there, and it was way too long. By day 3, we're all like, "What are we still doing here? Why are we doing this?" Well, Tyler, do you have any more games to discuss? Because I have my final question, which is kind of a tough one. So I wanted to check with you first.
No, go ahead. I think I've answered all
You got
the
okay,
questions
because
that I have.
my final question is if you had to pick a game on this list for a non-gamer to be like, how do they get this person into video games with the idea of like a relaxing video game experience, what would you choose? This is a hard one.
For a non-gamer,
Yeah, I think non-gamer is going to make it narrow down a little bit.
it will, yeah. I mean, because for a non-gamer, I would probably lean towards something like Picross. Because, as I say, puzzle games, I think, are the easiest transition over, especially something like Picross, which you could technically do with pen and paper, where you just have a grid and you're just shading in the boxes that way. And in fact, that's how a game I recommend to a lot of my friends who are not gamers but have a Switch. That they'll have, and they've bought a Switch for one game, whether it's Mario Kart for us to play online together or Animal Crossing, and they're like, what else do I get? And so the game that I tend to recommend a lot is one of the Picross games, and pretty much every time they've said, oh yeah, no, I can't stop playing this thing.
I love it.
So yeah, that would probably be my choice.
Great answer. Great. Well, excellent. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. That's kind of we're kind of near the end here. That was it. But I wanted to do the big question we always end on for each one of us. And you can start, Ryan, if you're ready. It's what you've been playing.
So 2 games. The first one is Balatro. I think that's how you pronounce it.
I've heard about this, the poker one, right?
Yes. It's, hey, what if we kind of took poker but made it a roguelike?
Mhm.
And
Ooh, that sounds fun.
yeah, it's something I'd never heard of until someone at work mentioned it in February and said, "Have you heard of this game?" I was like, "No, I've never heard of it." And it's one of those things when someone suggests a game, you're like, "Oh, that's probably months away from coming out. You're just going to show me a trailer." And it was like, "No, it's out for every platform. You can play it right now." Until I think it got taken down because there was some stuff with the rating, because it had elements. They claimed it had elements of gambling in because it's playing cards when really
Mhm.
there's no gambling at all in it. But it's cool. You start off with a standard deck of cards usually, and each round you are just playing up against a blind, which is almost like a character, and you're just playing poker hands from a 5-hand set, and you have a certain number of discards and a certain number of hands to hit, like 300 chips or 600 chips. And the better the hand, of course, like poker, the better it is, and the more chips you'll earn. But then as you keep playing, the roguelike elements start to come into play. So it can be that you can actually upgrade the hand. So a full house, if you level it up, is worth more points. Or you can add cards to your deck. So if you wanted to add another king in there, or if you wanted to change the suit of certain cards. So you say you were building a deck that had a lot of diamonds, which makes getting a flush easier. And then you have this tarot cards, which again can influence cards. So if you can turn a card into a steel card, which basically ups your multiplier if you have it in your hand and you keep it in your hand. So whatever your score is, multiply it by 1.5 and things like that. And it's one of those games that you play and you try and get as far as you can, and then if you fail, you go back to the beginning again. And yeah, it keeps surprising me because I keep unlocking new decks. So there's one deck where you have no face cards at all. So you're trying it out from okay, well, I can't rely on jacks or kings or queens or anything like that. And it's really like one of those things. I love those types of games where you've never heard of and fly, you catch under your radar, and then it just blows you away. Because I feel those types of experiences, maybe I'm becoming jaded in my older age, like they become harder and harder, because especially if you're in the industry, because you know what's coming out, you pretty much know a lot of the stuff. And that was one of those rare exceptions where I was like, oh my god, like had I missed out on this, I would have missed out on something special. So if you've not played it, I cannot recommend it enough.
I'm gonna look into it. You're
I
not the
just
first
looked it
person
up
to tell
on
me.
Steam right now, and I'm added to my wish list.
Yeah.
Looks fun.
I think it's only like £15, $15, somewhere around there. So
Yeah.
and it was made by one person, I think, as well. And
Okay.
the other game that I was playing and have been playing since January is Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
I came to the Yakuza series quite late. I came to it. I think I played Yakuza 0 was my first one. I think that's the first one that kind of went quite mainstream and found an audience over here. And that was a brawler, that one, and I really enjoyed it. And then I played 6, and I started dipping into some of the other ones. And then Like a Dragon came out, which was a turn-based RPG, and somehow they managed to turn Yakuza into a turn-based RPG, and it was amazing. And that game, I think, again, because of the timing, maybe, and it coming out during the lockdown and COVID and everything, the main character in it, Ichiban Katsuga is his name. He's got such a positive attitude, such an upbeat attitude. And it was one of those games that actually made me quite emotional playing it, because it's all about friendship and forming bonds with people that you wouldn't normally expect to form bonds with. And so, of course, when the new one came out, it was like, well, I'm absolutely getting this. And it's managed to surpass even the previous one. It's just improved on the combat system, the story's still engaging, and it's even brought in Kiryu from the previous games. He's now playing a key role in it. And again, if you're into RPGs, I know obviously Final Fantasy is out at the moment, which is what a lot of attention is on, but don't skip on Like a Dragon either, because that game is pretty awesome as well.
Nice. Well, speaking of Final Fantasy, Tyler, what you been playing?
Well, after 65 hours, I finally finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the story. No spoilers. I love what they've done with the ending. I am like just downing YouTube videos, like explaining it to me, because there's like it's the same story as the original game, but there's also they're doing some multiverse shenanigans that is
Who
pretty
isn't?
weird. They've kind of got this thing like, do you know the newer Star Trek movies, the J.J. Abrams ones, how they're canon, but they're in a separate timeline because it's Star Trek and you can do all kinds of weird timeline shenanigans and it's still like true, right? I say that with air quotes, true. It's all fiction anyway. But Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth are doing, it seems like they're doing stuff kind of like that, where they're like, we're not saying the old game didn't happen, but this is a different timeline. It's like kind of what's going on there. So I love that. I love the ending. Very excited for a part 3 whenever that comes out in 4 or 5 years, probably. So I'm back on Persona 3 Reload. So I'm still in this JRPG mode. But I do really want to play. I got to play the first Like a Dragon. That I really want to play that so that I can play Infinite Wealth because it's been getting such good reviews. But that's all that I've been working on right now is just finishing up Rebirth, and now I'm back into Persona 3. So what about you, Mike?
I beat finally, after buying them years ago, the DLC for Doom Eternal. So I beat all those,
Nice.
which is sad because only 6 missions. It shouldn't take me that long, but I beat all the time. And then I've been playing Stardew Valley 1.6 update a lot. And then I dipped back into Helldivers 2 a little bit. I kind of fell out, but they did some updates to the game. They added, and there's no other way to describe this, the Sabertooth Tiger Zord from Power Rangers is now in the game as an automaton enemy.
Okay.
And the reason I said it just looks exactly like the Zord from Power Rangers. And like there's no other way around it. And so I play a little bit of that, but I haven't actually encountered it yet. But it's cool. I like what they're doing with that game and like the storytelling. They're just kind of doing it by how players react to the story. They switch it around, like if they're gonna get a victory here or not, they do different things. So I'm still dabbling in that, but most of my time is Stardew Valley. Again, I'm hooked in again. It's got me again, and I'm close to getting all of the community center stuff done. I'm pretty close. In year 1, it's kind of a whole different vibe. I talked about it last week, but it's a whole different vibe when you've played the game once before and restarting it again, and how you know what to look for and you know what to do, and how I'm kind of trying to min-max it a little bit. But yeah, so I love that. But it's been really fun. It's been great having you here today, Ryan. Thank you so much for being on the
No, thank you for
podcast.
having me.
And before we go, the book is The Most Relaxing Games. And what's the best place for people to purchase it? Like, do you have a preference of where they go buy it at?
I mean, so it's out in the UK at the moment. You can get it through Amazon and a lot of the other major retailers there. It comes out in the US and other territories in Europe on May 31st, and
Okay.
this is hardback as well, and also Kindle and digital versions as well will come out around the same time, I think. Also,
Perfect.
and Amazon's they're up on Amazon as well to pre-order.
Awesome. All right, well, go ahead and pre-order the book. And then I have your Twitter down here at RyRyJanes here. And then what do you have any other things you want to plug, like a website or anything like that?
I mean, as I said earlier, like I write for a reviews for a Nintendo website called Nintendo Insider. I've been doing that. I mean, that's something I just do, because I enjoy writing. And I've been doing that since Sonic Mania was my first, so that was 2017, I think. So I've been doing it for about 7 years now. So I'll pop up there, with reviews every now and again. Yeah, I mean that'll be where you'll find me most of the time for my writing, and then future books as well over the coming years as well.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. If you want to help us out, you can go to our website, codexpodcast.net. We have all of our links on there to our Discord and everything, and join in there. Send us an email at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. Other than that, though, I think that's it. Tyler, do you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Sure. Goodbye, everybody.